Good evening, folks. Welcome to the 64th episode of the Matias Sports Podcast. I have Fairhaven Blue Devils football coach Derek Almeida. How are you, sir?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I just figured, deep dive into your career, where you been. I did see what you sent me. I mean, it seems like you got a broad variety, if I could say that right, of what you've done in your football career and coaching career, and just the floor is yours. Go for it.
Yeah, I've always taken an interest in the game of football. I got to play at Fairhaven High School, um, when I was going through school. And when I went to college, I kind of missed it a little bit. And I wasn't technically going to school in education to become a teacher. Um, but as I was working through college, I picked up assistant coach jobs and started substitute teaching and things like that. So really coaching was my pathway into education as well. Um, I was able to come back and coach a year of freshman football at Fairhaven High School when I was probably like 21, 20 years old, somewhere in there. And then I got a job down the Cape in Falmouth as an assistant for a long time. And that's where I got my first teaching job as well. So I was an assistant coach down there for a while. I was able to coach some freshman basketball as well. Um, and then it kind of, started shifting around a little bit. You start applying for some head jobs here and there, and you run into a couple dead ends, and you're trying to kind of find your way as a coach. Where do you see yourself long term? I ended up getting a teaching job in New Bedford High School for a few years, and I was able to get on Chuck Allaire's staff at New Bedford Voc. And I worked with those guys for a few years. And then an opening opened back up in Falmouth, where I was previously as the head coach. And I was able to attain that position. Went down there and ended up getting a bunch of guys that had played for me in the past down there as assistant coaches. Really loved my time down there. There was nothing but positives down the Cape in Falmouth. Great parents, great families, great school system. But unfortunately, I was commuting. I've always lived in New Bedford as an adult, and it was putting a little bit of a strain on the family, just trying to commute, down the Cape every day. And then the job opened up at Fairhaven, back where I grew up. I actually grew up a couple of blocks from that stadium as a kid, and my father was the head coach there for a long time. So I saw the opportunity, and I wasn't sure exactly if I wanted, if I was ready to move, but I figured it was worth a little bit of an investigation. And then that was right around COVID, and I literally, I think, interviewed for the job like the week before everybody kind of shut down with the schools.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of a weird time, and I think everybody was kind of doing a lot of soul searching at that point. And it kind of gave you the opportunity to spend more time at home with loved ones and stuff. And so when I got the opportunity, I grabbed it. I got a teaching job and coaching job at Fairhaven High, and I've been there for the past 6 years. Um, a lot of ups and downs in coaching. I think you remember the losses a lot more than you remember the
Yeah.
wins.
Yep.
The ones that got away from you. So, but I've been doing it for a while now, and I really love the experience. I like taking a team from point A to point B. You get them in the off season. We already got our weight program going, and you can see the energy and the competitiveness of the young kids already. So I'm looking excited to put some pads on when we get there in August, and kind of see what our next year's team is going to be like. But that's the fun part. Is just watching the growth of the kids throughout the program.
Yeah, along your stops. I mean, what differs from Vogue to Falmouth to Fairhaven? What differs between like the schools, like just going to different schools, being on like obviously the South Coast to the Cape, because all those kids are probably competitive, but I just kind of want you to, briefly describe what's the difference between being in Fairhaven, going to Falmouth, working with the Vogue kids? Like, is there any difference, or they're just all main goal is just win, 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 and everybody is kind of like a brotherhood?
Probably going to give you a bad answer because I think it's kind of yes and no,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Kids are kids, and
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody says kids are different nowadays, and this place and that place. I don't really see too much of a difference, right? Like, I think generally, kids want to have success. They want to improve. They want to work hard. They care about each other. So I think it's up to us to create environments for that to kind of grow and fester on its own. That's our job as coaches to create those situations for kids. I'm very lucky back in Fairhaven specifically. Um, I grew up in that town. I kind of have a feeling of how the kids grew up, and there is a level of toughness and competitiveness that I really like about Fairhaven kids. Are they drastically different than other places? No, but there certainly is a little bit of an edge to them, and I think maybe because I can relate to them and kind of, I grew up on the same, the same blocks and the same
Hmm.
streets and the same, played at the same rec centers and the same gyms and that type of thing. So it's probably just me relating a little bit better to this group than I have in other places. But kids are kids, and I think if you set up an environment where kids are put in a position where they're being held accountable to work hard and care about each other, I think the good side of this generation comes through. I think all the generations have their own little negative quirks, and
Hmm.
obviously you got social media and cell phones and things like that, and I think that's a little bit of a negative strain on this generation. But like they're not out there with their phones when they got
Yeah.
pads on and they're competing, and so yeah, maybe they're a little bit different in their social lives and things like that, but on the courts, on the fields, in sports, I think, it's kind of human nature to let that competitiveness, that toughness, that work ethic come through. So, we just got to create those environments. That's the key, I think.
No, absolutely. That wasn't a bad answer at all. I was just curious if it just differs from different stops because you're dealing with Southcoast and then you're dealing with Cape kids. So I know kids are kids, obviously, but I was just curious what kind of experiences you experienced being at, two different, three different schools compared to, Cape and then the South Coast where you grew up in Fairhaven.
Yeah, and again, I go back to what I said. I think it
Yeah.
is that yes and no, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, there are some nuances, there are some slight differences, but generally speaking, I don't do much very differently
Hmm.
to coach, the Fairhaven kid as opposed to the New Bedford Vogue kid or the Falmouth kid. I think you have an approach, you find an approach that works for you, and allows you to make connections with the kids, and you go from there. So yeah, there's some differences. There's we're in a society where you're you're dealing with the home lives of kids more
Hmm.
so than maybe you did when I was a kid or my parents were kids. But um, you got to take that into account. That there's things going on. We're probably more aware. We're more aware of things
Absolutely.
maybe than we used to be. So maybe it's not that much different. We just know about a lot more. So uh, bottom line is, I think if you create the right atmosphere, uh, I think that the good side of kids will come out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I know you've been at Fairhaven for the past 5, 6 years. You sent me a record 55 and 13. That's incredible. In 5 seasons or 5+ seasons, like two championships. Congratulations on your recent championship as well.
Thank you.
Two and 3 years. I believe you said 2023 and 2025. But yeah, talk about those championship teams and what the kids really meant. And are they two-time champs, some of them, or some of them just got one because they were seniors or juniors? Talk a little bit about like your football program at Fairhaven.
Yeah, so this senior class has been a part of a lot of the success that we've had recently.
Hmm.
There's a few kids that started as sophomores on that last state championship team. A couple of them had already played a little bit on the varsity as freshmen. So, this group has been, a big part of what we've accomplished in the past 3 years, as well as some of the kids that have graduated last year and the year before. Um, we I came to Fairhaven with kind of the one mindset of trying to grow the program, get it to a competitive level, be able to compete with Old Rochester, with New Bedford Vogue, with Dartmouth on Thanksgiving. We have some really, really big, nice, natural rivalries in our conference, in our local teams. That's tough to find. You don't have that everywhere. We got Route 6 that travels,
Mm,
right through our schools. So, these are kids that, play youth sports versus each other growing up. And this Thanksgiving Day rival's been around for a long time. So, coming in, like, that's what I wanted to accomplish was being competitive in those games. And we had to get stronger. We had to make a commitment in the off season to the weight room. We had to try to get more kids out for football. The roster numbers were a little bit lower. So even when we weren't competing for state championships, those things were starting to hit home. The roster was growing. I could tell we were getting stronger. What we needed, obviously, was some high end football players, some really good talent. You don't accomplish what we've accomplished just by having good kids that are hardworking. You
mm,
got to have some players too.
absolutely.
That's the bottom line. And these last few classes have had some of Fairhaven's best football players that they've ever had. These are kids that when you talk to guys that have been around for a long time, they're comparing them to, the guys from, the 2000s, the 90s, the 80s, the 70s. You get some comparisons, and it's pretty amazing that, some of these kids have been at that level. So, um, we've had that success. I think we've had some real great leadership from our seniors, our captains, our experienced guys. Once you go through, getting knocked out of the playoffs or going through a playoff run, that experience is invaluable, not just as a player, but even our coaching staff, learning from mistakes we've made and coming up with a better plan, a better scheme, whatever it is. So, you're that whole idea of iron sharpens iron. I mean, it's true. When you
Hmm.
get in the playoffs, you start playing better teams, and there's more at stake. You go on the road, you travel, and to play the top seed in your bracket, whatever that is. You're preparing for these battles, these games that not only are competitive and tough in that one environment, but they've also made your program better. The young kids are along for that ride. Maybe they only play a few snaps on kickoff
Hmm.
or special teams, but they feel it. They feel the level. So they get to experience that, and they want to experience that again. And I think it's just raised the level of the whole program. We're not always going to be competing for state championships. We've had the talent level in the last few years to be able to do that. But I feel pretty confident that we're going to be a competitive, tough football program going forward.
No, absolutely. And I know there's been one kid that's kind of stood out. I've seen him on social media. He's probably graduated by now, but he was setting all kind of records. I mean, Justin Marks. What can you say about him? I mean, he just seems like he's a beast at his position. And I don't know if I followed him on social media or I just kept hearing about him, heard about him from a former coworker of mine. Like, talk about him. I mean, is he still playing ball? And what was it like to coach, a player of his caliber? Obviously, setting all kind of records.
Yeah, I mean, I think kids like Justin only come around so often. He's arguably the best football player that's ever played in our school.
Hmm.
I saw him as a freshman when I was first starting in Fairhaven, and you could tell that he was a little different. He was different than anybody I had coached before. Um, he was already physically mature, probably not quite there mentally yet to do some of the things that he ended up accomplishing. But he was ready to go. He was a pretty seasoned football player already, even as a young kid. Um, and then what happened was we kind of got a lot of really good kids around him that were willing to work hard, especially in the off season in the weight room. So we ended up getting a really strong offensive line in front of him. And then we had a lot of other pieces on both sides of the ball as well. And it kind of clicked his sophomore year, and then into his junior year where we won the state championship, and then his senior year where we went back. Um, he ends up breaking a ton of records. He's the all-time touchdown leader for the state of Massachusetts career. He has every record, for Fairhaven High as a touchdown guy or a ball carrier. But he did it the right way. He did it with class. He did it with integrity. He worked hard. He bought into our culture. He never put himself above the team. Um, So, he was a phenomenal football player, but he's a great person, a great kid. And he really was the face of our program, for the time that he was there. And he rose the level. It was we we were pretty good. In my first couple of years, we were okay. We were making the tournament, but we were going up against teams that were a little better than us, a little bigger, a little faster, a little stronger. And I think he wanted to compete with those teams, and he wanted to beat those teams, and he was willing to put the work in. And again, I think he raised the level of our whole program. But I enjoyed coaching him. It was a great time. I have two young boys that hang around the team a lot, and he was always great to my kids. And he's been graduated now for a year, but he comes to our practices when he can.
Oh
He's
wow.
he's been on our sidelines for a few of the games, helping us out, talking to the kids. He ended up doing a prep school year over here in Rhode Island. What's the name of the school?
Is it? No, not
uh,
Xaverian. I'm trying to.
no,
Geez.
no, a prep
That's
school in Rhode Island. It's
that's probably
Portsmouth
Massachusetts.
Abbey. Sorry, I'm Portsmouth.
Portsmouth.
Portsmouth Abbey, and had a great season. He had a great season. Kind of looking for that extra year of development. The recruiting game right now is very challenging with
Mm-hmm.
transfer portal and NIL money. Kids are moving around like crazy. It's tough for kids to come out of high school
I've
and,
noticed.
and get scholarships and athletic offers. Uh, so he was looking at doing an extra year, try to position himself as good as he can. There's a number of schools that are still interested in him. He's going to land somewhere and he'll play next year, and I know he's going to be successful.
No, that's great. I mean, probably a lot of D1 schools probably want him, and locally potentially. I'm assuming. I mean, the way you
Yeah, the
talk about him.
challenge, the challenge with the Division 1 schools is now you're talking about national recruiting.
Yeah.
Where they can get kids from everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a phenomenal athlete and a phenomenal football player. Are there kids that have better measurables of 40 time, size, speed, strength? Yes. So for those Division 1 scholarship schools, that's what you're competing against. Football wise, I think he is at that level. So when he gets that opportunity, and I'm sure he's going to, um, I think he's going to be successful. So he'll figure out what school he wants to go to. I'm assuming he's probably at the point where he might make that decision soon. And then we'll wish him the best of luck. And I know he's going to have success. But he was huge with our program. I know he accomplished a lot individually, but our teams also accomplished a lot with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, I want to stay with the Fairhaven program, but how is it? Like, I'm not trying to sound like a fanboy or anything, but how was it obviously getting the chance to play at Gillette Patriots concerts? A bunch of crap happens there. I mean, that's a beautiful stadium. I love that place. Anyways, how is it with the players, the coaches, just to be able to play on the same playing field as NFL teams and the Patriots? Like, how is it, just being there on the field, fighting for a state championship? I'm sorry.
So I think the lead up to it, the bus ride, you pull
Hmm.
into the stadium,
Yeah.
you walk on there for the first time, like all of that stuff is exactly what you're saying. It's that cool experience,
Hmm.
those once in a lifetime opportunity type things. Bottom line, whistle blows, it's football,
It
you know.
is.
Um, and I think the kids kind of fall into that and they just play. Um, I've been very proud of how well we've played once we've gotten there. Um, we've played some of our best football. We got there 3 years in a row, which was very challenging to do. Um, and then once you get there, it's hard to play well because you're playing in a very intense environment versus probably the best team you've played through that season. We're very fortunate that we won 2 out of 3. We beat Salem the first year. We lost to Hudson the second year, and then we beat Norwell this year. In each game, I thought our kids went out there and competed and played as hard as they could. And twice we made more plays than the other team. And I think that comes down to our preparation, how hard we practice. Our kids were ready each game that we went there. So it feels pretty good to go up there and get there 3 years in a row. but also to get through the finish line and win to
Yeah,
them.
absolutely. I mean, obviously, like you said, it's a once in a lifetime. Not many kids get to go two, three, four state championships and play at Gillette. So, I mean, was
Well,
there?
I was walking through our warm up like a couple days before Gillette, and you, you start thinking about like when we played and that
Mhm.
type of thing. And my senior year, unfortunately, we only played 9 football games, and they were redoing our school with construction, so we had no home games. So I'm walking through the line, and I'm like, yeah, I got to play 9 high
Road
school football
games.
games on the road.
Yeah.
These guys are getting ready for their 13th game, and their third state championship game in 3 years, so it kind of
Hmm.
puts it in perspective, you
Yeah,
know, who had a
absolutely.
little bit better high school experience.
Hmm. No, absolutely. But obviously playing on, Gillette Stadium, it's a bunch of storied, a lot of records, a lot of things been happening there, a lot of Super Bowls, obviously, with the team, I should say, not the stadium. But did you guys like run into any like current players? Was there any like Patriot staffers there, like, wishing all the teams good luck, like stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, you get a little bit of the craft production pregame,
Hmm.
and there are some people walking around the field at times. I can remember when our team went in Falmouth in 2016. It was like the day of some big like Patriots Hall of Fame night.
Yep.
So there were like all kinds of expatriates kind of walking around and watching, and that was kind of cool. But they keep you kind of separate. They bus you in, they walk you to the locker rooms, you walk out. You don't really have freedom to roam around.
That's
So
not
it's
what you're
really
there for, anyways.
no, but
Yeah.
and Kraft does a nice job. He does like a welcome message, and he has a couple of guys on the team will give a little shout out and stuff like that. So, I mean, you get all the other stuff. You get the music, the stadium, noise,
Hmm.
the big screen. Like I'm watching in between plays. Watching replays, trying to figure out what I want to fix and coach. So you get like that NFL experience. You
Yeah.
just is Tom Brady standing right over there? No, unfortunately we didn't run into him in any of the time we were there, but um, you know,
No, that's still pretty cool for the kids and the coaches and the parents and the families and friends. But no,
yeah, that's a
yes.
big part of it too. It's not only for your team. Um, it's fun for the town
Hmm.
and half the schools there. I wish the whole every kid was there, but the ones that take some interest in their school and things like that, they want to go up there. They're having a blast, yelling and screaming with their friends, and I played here, so like some guys that I played football with, they were excited. They went to the game. They texted me before, texted me after, and you drive through town and there's people out cheering for you and all that type of stuff. So it's as much as going there is this ultimate goal and it's exciting. Just it's really exciting for everybody.
Hmm. I mean, building off the championship this year, like I know it's still less than a year, 10 months, whatever the season will start in August, but what are you looking forward to most, you know, or expecting out of your team going forward the most, I should say?
Well, this will be our first big changeover. For the past 3 years, we've started the season with a pretty experienced team. Um, the first year we won the state championship, that was an inexperienced team. There were a couple kids that had been playing, that had played the year before, but we didn't have many lettermen back. We didn't have many starters back.
Hmm.
So that was really a team that kind of started from point A in August and became a championship team at the end of the year. The following year, we had almost our whole roster back. And then this year was kind of half and half, where we lost some guys, but we still had a lot of starters. We're losing the majority of our starters from last year. We'll have a few back, and then hopefully we have some young guys that'll step up. So, uh, in a lot of ways, these are the years that can be a little bit more enjoyable as a coach because you're going to get some surprises. You're going to get a little more competition at positions than you've had in the past. So I don't even know what our team will look like. Come August. I do know that The program works extremely hard. Our coaches work hard in the off season. Our players work hard. They play other sports. They come in and they lift. They'll do some stuff in the summer with our summer programs. So we'll be ready to go. Are we going to be playing for state championships next December? I mean, I don't go in with those expectations any year. So if you had to ask me now, no, we're not even close.
Yeah.
We've lost, number of starters on both sides of the ball. We just want to get ourselves ready to go where we can have a good camp in August and start the season on a positive note. And where that goes from there, we'll see. The best thing you can do is improve. You start from point A and you're trying to get to point B, and hopefully you make good decisions and you make impactful progress as you go throughout. That's the goal every year.
So I know you say you're losing a bunch of starters on offense and defense. I'm assuming your current quarterback's going to be graduating as well, and then you're going to have to start over in that department as well.
Yeah, so Evan Lamontagne was our starter this year. He was a starter on defense the previous 2 years, but this was his first year as our starting quarterback. He did a great job, phenomenal job leading our team. We had a lot of weapons, and he really did a nice job of spreading the ball around. We have a sophomore, Jackson Pont, who got to play quite a bit. We were in some lopsided games where we pulled our starters, sometimes as early as the second quarter. He ended up being a starter on defense, basically for the whole second half of the year. But he also got to play some varsity quarterback. And then on Thanksgiving, Evan was a little banged up, wasn't quite 100%. So we ended up starting the sophomore, Jackson. So he played a full game against Dartmouth already. Really excited about him. He had a great sophomore year. Like I said, he started on defense, played great for us down the stretch. I think he's going to hit the ground running in August. And I think we're going to have a really, really strong player at quarterback. We have a couple other young kids in the program that I think will push him. He's going to have a little bit of the experience nod there. But we got a kid coming from the freshman team, Shane Morris. We got a kid coming from the JV team, Jackson Dane. So we're really, really positive about where the quarterback position is going to go going forward.
No, it's good that you got kind of like a guy that's can hit the ground running, as you say, and he can probably run your offense next year, looking a year ahead. But no, I wish you best of luck. But one last thing before I let you go, I got to congratulate you on being the 2025 New England Patriots, coach of the year. I want you to just briefly describe to the viewers what does it mean to be, the coach of the year. And I did see that you sent me you were a finalist back in 2016. I could have the year wrong, but what does that mean to you and your family?
Well, I take pride in the work that I put into football. I do work year round on football. That's running a football program is a very important aspect of my life. So, everywhere else takes a hit. You're not spending as much time as you'd like to at home and things like that. So, when you get some rewards at the end of the tunnel with, when you have players that are getting recognized for their accomplishments, your team getting recognized, and then personally as coaches, it makes it a little bit easier to swallow, but the Patriots award, it's really a team award.
Mm-hmm.
They're not giving it to a coach that went 2-9 and had a nice year. They're honoring the success of your team, and then they're giving you some individual credit for it. So I got a great football staff. My coaches work extremely hard. The kids in our program, I've said it 1,000 times, but they're hard workers. They care about each other. It's really a special group of kids. So I look at it as a team accomplishment. It's something that we've worked for. I think they chose the right team. They chose a group of guys that work together, that never really had a goal of winning a state championship, but just wanted to be the best team we possibly could be,
Mm-hmm.
and it ended up being that. So I'm proud of it. I know I work hard, but I know there's a lot of other coaches and players that are working extremely hard, and to be honored for that is huge.
No, I appreciate you taking the time. Again, congratulations on the Super Bowl win with you and your team, and obviously being the coach of the year for the Patriots. I mean, that award that would mean something to me. So again, congratulations and best of luck in 2026. Thank you again.
Thank, thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you.